I want us to be together always.
Hollywood's hidden stars, this week on Siskel and Ebert. Hollywood's hidden star, this week on Siskel and Ebert.
This week, Siskel and Ebert review medical students Julia Roberts, Kiefer Sutherland, and Kevin Bacon experimenting with life after death in Flatliners. A Manhattan preppy studies the idle rich in Metropolitan. And Emilio Estevez returns as Billy the Kid in Young Guns 2. It's all coming up next on Siskel and Ebert.
I'm going next.
Wait a minute. Nobody is going next. You're looking for answers? There's no answers here. I think you just saw what you wanted to see.
Some cocky young medical students devise a dangerous experiment with life and death itself in Flatliners. And that's one of the new movies this week on Siskel and Ebert, along with a long-awaited sequel to Chinatown, Jack Nicholson's The Two Jakes. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is called Flatliners, an adventure story about a group of medical students who want to experience death, so they stop each other's heartbeats for a couple of minutes. Their EKG shows no pulse, it's just a flat line on the monitor. After a couple of minutes, they're revived like the way paramedics work, and they end up telling each other about what they experienced as they cross into death. Kiefer Sutherland plays the ringleader of the crowd. At first, Julia Roberts, another med student, doesn't want to join in or help out.
Give me 30 seconds. Put the blanket on to warm. Take me up to 93 degrees. Slowly. Inject 1 cc of adrenaline. And at 1 minute, Joe, you come in with the defibs. And you bring me back to life.
With brain damage.
The movie has highbrow tendencies as the students work on each other in a school lab that actually looks more like a Gothic church. Sutherland is prepared to enter the death state.
No! Clear. What are you doing? Cicely, you are killing him. It's called murder?
Eventually, a competition develops among the students over who is willing to stay dead the longest. Suddenly, naysayer Julia Roberts wants in, and she begins a bidding war against William Baldwin.
Like it or not, I'm going next.
I'd be willing to go 1 minute, 20 seconds.
1:30.
Hey, hold on.
The movie turns into a drama about what these kids experience in the death state. Each one has a nightmare involving a deep-seated guilt over a traumatic event early on in his or her life. And as I watched this scene as Julia Roberts walks with Kevin Bacon on the bridge, I didn't think that Julia Roberts' newfound stardom from Pretty Woman was a help. Her familiar beauty works against the credibility of this preposterous story.
Well, I decided that when someone is as smart and as driven as you are, and incredibly beautiful, that it makes the rest of us very nervous.
The sins in Flatliners that these kids are trying to expiate through these death experiences revolve around incidents like childhood cruelty or a self-destructive father. And if we can say we're sorry, this film argues, I guess we'll be happier in life. Actually, that serious side of the film is what I enjoyed the most. What I didn't like was the long, ain't med school fun setup to the whole adventure. And I did wonder from time to time, maybe you did too, Roger, if whether young people watching this picture might try to imitate the stunt that's being pulled off here by holding their breath or doing something like that?
You'd have to hold your breath for a long time, Gene. I've always been fascinated by these stories about the fact that after you die, there's this tunnel of white light and there's beautiful music and your relatives greet you and so forth, which is the experience that they're trying to recreate by deliberately killing themselves and then resuscitating themselves. I thought this movie was smart. I thought it was brainy. I thought it was fascinating. There were two things about it that I didn't like so much, but it didn't involve Julia. How can you attack Julia Roberts for having been familiar because she's in Pretty Woman? What about Kiefer Sutherland? What about Kevin Bacon?
I thought
this movie has movie stars in it.
That's right.
Every movie we see has movie stars in it.
I figured
Are you going to say she should have never made another movie?
No. I thought you might bring that up, and that's why I want to say that these guys, who are also familiar for me, seem to be played down, and maybe the way they're photographed is played down. Here she seemed to be photographed as beauteous object, whereas these guys, who could be good-looking and appealing to other people...
You have a hard time photographing her in any other way. She's a good-looking woman, and I don't hold that against her in this movie. But apart from that, what I didn't like about the film is after they get into the thing that is beyond death, it's disappointing. It involves making amends. You got to go back to childhood and talk to a kid that you weren't nice to in grade school or something. It's got to be, I've always felt that mankind, in trying to imagine what is up there in heaven and what is there after death, has an enormous lack of imagination. Can you imagine what it must really be like if there is an afterlife?
Well,
it's not going to involve making sure all your books are settled.
Maybe it could involve having all of your emotional books settled. It could.
It could, according to you. It'd be nice if it did.
According to me and a lot of the world's religions,
well,
I think.
According to me and a lot of the world's directors, maybe this movie could have reached a little further. Anyway, another movie playing around the country is Young Guns 2, a film that seems to want to ask this question. Could Billy the Kid have benefited from some timely psychological counseling? The movie stars Emilio Estevez as Billy the Kid in a rewrite of history that claims Pat Garrett didn't really kill the kid at all, and also that Billy was more image than reality, even to himself.
Well done, William. Splendid performance. However, there are 3 candles left and only 2 bullets.
This is an Indian burial ground that the gang comes across, and Christian Slater wants to desecrate one of the graves. This is Lou Diamond Phillips as a half-breed member of the group who doesn't want the bones of his ancestors disturbed, and so they get into a fight, but the fight is just another fight scene, and the movie is filled with things like this that don't really go anywhere and seem to be recycled out of other Western movies. Billy the Kid's ability to convince those around him that he does lead a sort of charmed life allows him to sell them fantasies like this one about a trail he says leads to Mexico.
I'm taking the Mexican Blackbird.
Well, what are you taking?
A broken trail to go down to Old Mexico. Only me and a few other boys know it.
And that is Kiefer Sutherland as the other actor in that scene. And these actors, Emilio Estevez, Christian Slater, Lou Diamond Phillips, Kiefer Sutherland, are all good actors. And they were good in the original film. They're good in this film. What I kept getting the feeling of, though, was that they had given more thought to who their characters were and what their characters were like than the screenplay and the direction ever gave any thought to. So that they seemed to have an interior life going on in many of the scenes that never got out of the movie and out to the audience because the screenplay is so dumb.
Yeah, I think the screenplay doesn't have a real attitude about the characters, or at least a consistent one. I mean, obviously what we're watching here, you know, you criticize the film for them not being John Wayne or not being Robert. Well, that's the point of the picture. It is called Young Guns, so they're trying to show that actually people closer in age to the age that these characters really were. They were very young. I think maybe what we resent is that they seem so contemporary and in their language choices sometimes that it just rings false. They stand out apart from the setting. The other thing is, the picture starts to embrace Billy the Kid, and then it disposes of him. I don't know that the writer knows what he thinks of Billy the Kid.
I mean, the movie starts and ends with the fact that Billy the Kid is still alive in 1950, allegedly, and talking about all these things that happened in his past. And the movie itself never seems to have an attitude toward that. Is he a good guy? He wants a pardon, he says. I want the governor to pardon me for the 22 men I killed. But then it turns out he did kill 22 men.
No, the picture doesn't add anything to our knowledge about Billy the Kid. Coming up later in the show, the raging controversy involving movies that may have to be censored in order to avoid the dreaded X rating. But next, Jack Nicholson returns as Detective Jake Gittes in the Chinatown sequel, The Two Jakes.
You think you're gonna get away with this?
Paul, is it your father shot an innocent woman while her little girl watched?
And what a fine shot it was.
Jack Nicholson once again playing the hard-boiled detective Jake Gittes in the new movie The Two Jakes, the Chinatown sequel, 16 years after Roman Polanski made that film. This has been a troubled production. You may have read about it, with an assortment of writers and directors and producers working over the last 5 years, but Jack Nicholson finally took over some of the writing and all of the direction himself, and the result, I think, is a triumphantly stylish movie, a tribute to the classic films of the night, the film noir of the 1940s. As Detective Jake Gittes, Nicholson once again finds himself caught up in a murder case involving secret dealings over the Southern California landscape after home builder Harvey Keitel kills his partner when he finds him in bed with his wife.
You think you're gonna get away with this?
I'm not getting away with a thing, Jake.
Tell you what I'm gonna do. You guarantee Mark Bodine's widow her husband's full share of the subdivision, so I don't have to worry about lawsuits and the police, and you won't have to worry about me. Otherwise, I'm gonna prove that you deliberately murdered the man.
You know something, Jake? You might think you know what's going on around here, but you don't.
I had a couple of constant thoughts while I was watching this most entertaining movie. I enjoyed the physical craftsmanship of the picture, the lighting, the camera angles, the 40s clothes and props, the subtle but striking music. More important, though, I enjoyed the convoluted script that challenged me to stay with it. This is not a lame-brained summer entertainment for the international action picture market. It's a movie in love with movies. The ending is awkward, but other than that, I really enjoyed The Two Jakes.
I did too. You know, the script was written by Robert Towne, who also wrote the original Chinatown. And what I liked about it is this is not a thriller and it's not a whodunit. There are thrills in it. We do find out who done it, but we also find out why he done it, so to speak. And the most important scene in the movie, the one that really everything is leading up to, is that final confrontation between the two Jakes, in which what you find out is that there are things in the heart and things in the conscience that are so much deeper and so much more compelling than the ordinary mechanics of guilt and innocence and crime and punishment and good guys and bad guys. This movie isn't about that at all. This movie is really about love. It's about how both Jakes are, because of loves that they've had and lost or feel that they're going to lose, have their entire destinies carved out for them. And it is a very intelligent and emotional movie.
Well, I mean, the word I'll pick up on what you just said is intelligent. This is a picture that does, I said it before, it challenges an audience to stay with it. And I wondered as I watched this, I said, all right, I'm being challenged. I'm having a good time here. I wonder if this picture has become irrelevant, if people even know what's being attempted here by Nicholson, who obviously has studied films and wants to take films to return them, actually, not get them back to what they were.
It's not just another wind-up toy where the little plot is put out there and it does its little dance and the audience all sits there. This is a movie by adults and for adults.
Sophisticated.
And it challenges them. And we have another one coming up that does the same thing. It's called Metropolitan, and this is a new movie about the debutante rituals of rich kids in New York's preppy world.
There's something about winter in the city at night with everyone dressed up that reminds me of War and Peace.
The perfect...
It's an acronym for Urban Haute Bourgeoisie.
Is our language so impoverished that we have to use acronyms of French phrases to make ourselves understood?
Yes.
UHB. The term is brilliant and long overdue.
I wonder if that phrase is going to catch on, the UHB, the UB, or Urban Haute Bourgeoisie. Our next movie is named Metropolitan, and it was written and directed by Whit Stillman, who may very well want to create a new catchphrase like yuppie or UB, if only because his uncle, oddly enough, is the man who coined the phrase WASP many years ago. Metropolitan is about a specific subspecies of WASP, the rich young New York preppies who every year conduct the ritual of debutante parties and dances that are held over the Christmas season. Now here they are in this scene at a dinner dance, somewhat self-consciously practicing the art of sophisticated small talk.
It is precisely the bourgeoisie which is responsible for nearly everything good which has happened in our civilization over the past 4 centuries. Do you know the French film, The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie? When I first heard that title, I thought, finally, someone's going to tell the truth about the bourgeoisie. What a disappointment. It would be hard to imagine a less fair or accurate portrait.
Well, of
course. Buñuel's a surrealist. Despising the bourgeoisie is part of their credo.
A new member of their circle doesn't have as much money as the rest of them. He can't afford a fashionable winter coat, and he takes the bus home. Now, these are not traits the crowd fails to notice.
He's getting a crosstown bus. Well, that explains it.
A West Siders amongst us. So you had a trust fund. The pieces are beginning to fall into place. I don't have one anymore.
One of the things I like about the movie is there are a couple of things going on at once. These are Park Avenue kids, rich kids who go to good schools, and yet look at this scene. It's a strip poker scene that could be teenagers anywhere in America.
I call.
You had no cards. Why'd you call?
I felt like it.
That character, Nick, is played by Christopher Eigman, and his cynical realism is one of the most entertaining things about the movie. He is nothing if not a realist.
Unlike you, I've always assumed I'd be a failure anyway. That's why I planned to marry an extremely rich woman.
Now, where do you hear a conversation like that in the movies? It's so rare in the movies for characters to talk about themselves introspectively, to challenge their own beliefs, and yet at the same time, those are just teenagers. They're talking in elevated sociological terms, but they're saying the same things that teenagers all over America often say, which is, who are we? Who are our parents? Where are we headed? What's going to happen to us? And the interesting thing about this movie is the way that it takes those concerns and places them in this world, so it's both a study of that world on Park Avenue and a study of kids.
Well, that sounds great, and I would have thought that I would really have enjoyed this picture, but I got all that in probably about the first 20 minutes, which is they are kids, and they do use the elevated speech that kids, you know, kids will, you're right, it doesn't matter what class you're picking about, they have a style that wants to make them seem adult. You could argue that even rap songs is more forceful, and these are little kids inside of rap music or whatever. But I got that. And then I got it again, and I got it for the whole run of the picture, and I didn't get much more than that. These are the kind of people also, and I tried to like them, but they're the kind of people that I know I would have walked away from if they were at a party.
I don't know if you would have, Gene, because there's a character in the movie that would have been like that person that you would have been, the Tom Townsend character, the one with the London fog raincoat. He doesn't have the right navy blue raincoat. He's the one who says, I don't go to these parties, I politically disapprove of them, and the guy says, look, it's girls, it's free booze, it's free food, and you get to go to all the nice places, and it doesn't cost you anything. And I think that would have appealed to you in the sense that
the character.
It's fun, you see, in a way that has nothing to do with what it means.
That's the character that would have been closest to me. You're quite right, except I would have said, you know, why don't you people all dial down a bit and just talk normal?
Oh, come on, you're always talking about how you were in college, you stayed up all night having discussions just like the ones we just heard.
No, we were much smarter than the group there.
Well, I'm looking forward
much smarter.
Hope we find somebody that's smart enough to make a movie about the kind of person you were. Coming up next, the first movie to give itself a new rating, an A rating for an adult movie. It's self-applied by a film called Life is Cheap, but Toilet Paper is Expensive.
And I first proposed a new A rating for adult movies, an A rating that would take its place between the R and the X, so that movie makers wouldn't have to cut down their adult films to get an R that the studios required of them. Many others have joined this fight for such a change in the movie rating system. There are newspaper stories all the time now about protesting the movie rating system. Recently, some of America's top directors joined the fight. Now, in the latest development, one film company has actually given one of its controversial pictures an A rating even before the A rating exists. The movie is a satirical commentary on life today in Hong Kong. It's called Life is Cheap, but Toilet Paper is Expensive. It's about an Asian American courier bringing a mobster's briefcase to Hong Kong, and once in Hong Kong, the briefcase is stolen by punks.
Hey! Hey, where you going with that? Hey, come back here!
This movie was rated X because of 4 provocative scenes, including this one, a dream sequence where a hand is chopped off. Look away if you want.
Don't be fooled. Things ain't what they seem to be.
Sorry if that caught you unaware, but if we're going to talk about this objectionable material, we have to show it to you, at least in some way. Other objectionable scenes involve a man defecating and photos from a magazine of naked, pregnant women. It's not a special movie. Life is Cheap, Toilet Paper is Expensive. In fact, it's a seriously disjointed film, sometimes offensively so, but that's not the point right here. Filmmakers protested the X rating they received. They were turned down in their appeal. They may appeal again, but instead of cutting those scenes and getting an R rating, what they've decided to do now is give themselves this A rating that would signal that the picture is recommended for A, adults only, but is not hardcore pornography, the X. And I think that makes sense. And even if it's a publicity stunt, which it may very well be, I applaud Silverlight Entertainment for its creative approach to attacking the deeply flawed American movie rating system.
Yeah, well, I saw this movie, as you did last night,
right.
and it reminded me of some films that we used to see years ago, avant-garde films that try to experiment with things and throw in shocking images and mix up the continuity and so forth. I didn't think it worked as a film. I didn't enjoy it as a film, but I could see what the director, Wayne Wang, was trying to do, and he should be free to try to do that. And anyone who goes to this movie expecting to see a dirty movie is going to ask for a refund. They're going to be very disappointed because it's not that kind of movie at all, and that's why we need an A rating to take these kinds of movies into a different category than hardcore porno. Now, Jack Valenti said again this week, I haven't received a single letter from a single parent in America opposing the rating system. He must not open his mail because you and I have received carbons of letters to Jack Valenti from parents. You're a parent. You could write him a letter. I think it's time for him to realize that there's a real, genuine, sincere feeling in this country that the rating system needs to be fixed.
I saw the letter that this director wrote trying to justify the 4 scenes and his whole film. I thought, what a waste of time. Why is this guy bothering to have to do that? Let us see the picture he wanted to make or not see the picture he wanted to make and put some teeth into the fact that it will have an A rating for adults only. Because otherwise what will happen is he'll have to cut the sequences, we won't see the picture that he made, and kids will get in with it as an R-rated picture and they probably don't belong there anyway. It doesn't work. The rating system needs to be fixed. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this show. A split vote on Flatliners, the life after death after life movie. Roger liked the mood of the film. I found it to be wildly overwritten and corny. 2 downturned thumbs for the kiddie western sequel, Young Guns 2, with boys failing to do a man's job. 2 thumbs up, however, for Jack Nicholson's most impressive Chinatown sequel, The Two Jakes, a sophisticated detective story. A split vote on Whit Stillman's Metropolitan. Roger enjoyed the extended conversations in the debutante world more than I did. And 2 thumbs down for Life is Cheap, but Toilet Paper is Expensive, a film that nonetheless deserves its self-applied A rating. So it's The Two Jakes, which I think is really a terrific achievement by
Real good, real intelligent film, and I like Metropolitan too. That's it for this week. Next week we'll have an all-new edition in a continuing series we call Hollywood's Hidden Stars, where Gene and I select 4 actors we think don't